The prevailing scene on Prince William Sound is very different from what it was in late March. The cleanup is well underway, owing to widespread cooperation among the Coast Guard, environmentalists, local fishermen, and Exxon personnel who are leading a huge cleanup effort. Shock and disbelief have given way to increasing confidence that a methodical and persistent cleanup operation will succeed, sooner, not later. Almost 2 months have passed since the accidental spill by the Exxon-Valdez. To date, about 3/4 of the oil has evaporated, dispersed, or been cleaned up. In all of Prince William Sound, less than 10% of the 4,000-mile coastline was affected. On March 24th, at 4 minutes past midnight, the record of nearly 9,000 safe tanker loadings and trips from the port of Valdez was marred when the Exxon-Valdez ran aground on an underwater reef.
We have the Exxon-Valdez aground at Bly Reef. Request you proceed for possible assist. Over.
A part of her underside ruptured, releasing 260,000 barrels of crude oil into the immediate surrounding waters. The single most pressing priority was the emergency offloading of remaining cargo from a ship nearly the size of the Empire State Building. It was still filled with about 1 million barrels of oil, almost 80% of its total shipment, was teetering precariously and was in grave danger of being torn apart on the jagged rocks.
So the number one priority of Exxon Corporation and certainly the environmental agencies and the Coast Guard was to get that oil out of that ship.
It's sitting on what is perceived a rock or a group of rocks or pinnacles, and every 12 hours the list of the ship changes because the tide moves it up, and we had winds as high as 40 knots, and the heading of the ship did change, and tugboats had to hold us in place. And at that point in time, it could sink or could possibly capsize. It would have caused perhaps a tremendous disaster, as we were looking at roughly 1 million barrels of oil still on the vessel.
It was a monumental effort to get the 1 million barrels off. That was a great success story for everybody, for Exxon and for the Coast Guard people who were on there working. And that was great.
It was fantastic seamanship to put 3 other large Exxon tankers up against one that was stranded on the rocks, getting 1 million barrels of oil off of it.
Despite treacherous conditions on the underwater reef, including 40-foot swells, lightering the ship proceeded successfully for several days. Simultaneously, efforts also concentrated on removing the oil from the water. Chemical dispersants were clearly the best way to attack the oil and have proven effective many times in the past. Nevertheless, Exxon was required to repeatedly test them before they could go into widespread use. The dispersants were indeed effective, as can be seen in this test done Sunday, 3 days after the spill.
Dispersants cause the oil to lose its cohesive nature. It doesn't want to stick together anymore, and so therefore it just spontaneously breaks apart. The oil moving rapidly around on the surface of the water and being shattered into many pieces.
Unfortunately, by the time official approval was granted, the window of opportunity was lost, since gale force winds arrived, making spraying impossible. Meanwhile, Exxon developed and put forward its detailed cleanup plan for approval by the Coast Guard. The enormity of the cleanup is compounded by the sheer size, weather, and rugged geography of Prince William Sound.
You're talking about one of the most complex, rugged areas probably anywhere in the world, because it's so massive and there's nobody out there to speak of. We've had people call down from outside and say, yeah, we want to drive up and drive down and help clean up the beach. Well, when we tell them that you got to travel 50 miles by boat or by airplane to even reach the spill.
Just to get across Prince William Sound alone takes about 10 or 12 hours for an average vessel.
And I think they just see pictures in a newspaper, and you're seeing our whole sound in a picture. And I don't think they realize the immenseness of it, and they just think it's like a large lake.
In order to tackle the immense challenge, crews, supplies, and heavy equipment were located and flown to Valdez from all over the world.
We've gotten boom from Russia, Europe, the Far East. We've obtained pumps and those kind of things from all over the United States. Most of the stuff, of course, is coming in by air through Anchorage.
I liken it to war in that the time and distance factors are there, the communications factors are there, and the command and control factors are there, and it's a war from that point of view.
At the heart of the cleanup effort, Exxon established a command center which became headquarters for an ongoing operation not unlike a military campaign.
I think everybody recognizes that our common purpose is to mitigate the damage to the environment as rapidly as we can.
We're doing fine. I think the plan has not only caught up to the operation, but overtaken it. Now, the secret is for the plan always to stay ahead of the operation.
The logistics of feeding, housing, and supplying such a force in a wilderness area are staggering. The USS Juneau serves as a staging area for an all-out amphibious assault.
As you know, we're an amphibious warfare ship. Normally, our job is to transport Marines and their equipment to any place in the world, land the landing force in a hostile environment by air and surface components, and then support that force ashore either logistically or command and control-wise. Well, that mission is very adaptable to what we're up here for.
And it's ideal for the purposes used here because of the equipment you're able to carry in washing and cleaning the beaches.
Another of the key early priorities was to protect the vulnerable salmon hatcheries, so vital to the Alaskan economy.
The oil companies and the fishermen and whoever was working out there done a fantastic job of protecting those hatcheries.
There's fish around, they are spawning, the spawn looks good. There's quite a lot of it, so we should have a good hatch.
My opinion is those fish are going to come back and they're going to be clean. We're going to have a nice fishing season, and there won't be a big problem.
Fish will be clean, there's no doubt about that. It's just the public perception of not knowing if it's going to be tainted or afraid to buy it in case it would be.
Following the plan of priorities, the spilled oil was prevented from reaching the hatcheries. Although the herring season was canceled, the salmon fishing season opened as planned. Though unfortunately there are dead birds and otters, Exxon moved quickly to recruit wildlife specialists to locate and treat affected animals at 2 mammal recovery shelters and 3 bird centers established by the company.
After you've rinsed the bird, you'll see that all the feathers that are supposed to be waterproof, the water just drips off, and it just balls up and falls off, beads up. And so you know the waterproof is back intact.
It's so important to get these animals out of the water or out of an oil spill as quickly as possible, because in a matter of hours it can lose so much body heat that it goes into a hypothermic state. But we've passed the point where we're getting a lot of animals on the road to recovery, and that's made it worthwhile.
We're just towel drying the outer here. She's still perfectly dry down against her skin.
Another priority was to quickly attack the heavily oiled nearby islands, which are major pupping areas for the seal population.
We will mobilize our forces to Smith Islands and another chain of islands that we refer to as the seal pupping area. And we need to clean those islands, clean the oil off of those islands, which are primarily big rocks.
Just trying to hit the hot spots where the animals can come in, the mammals can come in, and have their young and take care of.
Work continues to remove the remaining shoreline oil by flushing it off the beach, skimming it up, and carting it away. It's a laborious operation. The so-called beaches, which are mostly piles of dark volcanic rock, present difficulties of their own, including tides that sometimes rise to 18 feet. Persistence, though, pays off. In just 2 days, this stretch of shoreline went from this to this.
Here you can see progress every day. You look back on the beach and you see it shining instead of that dull, crude look. It's progression.
We had a pretty good morale booster last night when they told us how many barrels we collected. And I think they're going to really get a surprise tonight.
We've seen a great deal of improvement. Apparently 3 to 4 times as much oil was recovered today than has been recovered, any of the last days out.
The best news in this plan is we're saying that we're quite confident that with the assumptions we have as to weather windows and things of that nature, we in fact will have most of these beaches and these rocks clean by mid-September 1989.
At the same time, extensive testing of the water for toxicity levels was being conducted across the whole of Prince William Sound, an area roughly the size of the state of Connecticut. Test results to date have been very positive, with no scientific evidence to restrict fishery activities.
This is a more detailed and more extensive investigation than anything I've ever been involved in.
The results of these tests are very positive. We are not seeing any mortality of very sensitive life stages. This includes algal species, intermediate plankton like shrimp, and then fish growth studies. So from a toxicity standpoint, we're very encouraged that indeed we have not had some substantive impacts on the water quality or aquatic life.
It's a serious attempt, and a laudable attempt, to determine what's going on in Prince William Sound. There are other oil spills I know where tankers have simply, and the companies have simply walked away from the whole mess and left it to the local people and to the government to clean up. That's not the case here.
Assisting in the cleanup is the unusual flushing activity in Prince William Sound. 100% of the water in the Sound is replaced every 20 days by the action of currents and waves.
Our environment's not going to be destroyed, and the environment will come back, the places that are damaged, and our standard of living will return to normal, and our standard of way of life, so to speak, will come back. And I'm confident that Exxon, I'm going to take Exxon at their word. They say they're going to be responsible, and until they prove otherwise, I'm going to believe them.
Everybody out here knows, most of the people that, you know, that have enough common sense to know that it was an accident. The Exxon didn't come in here and say, let's mess up the Prince William Sound.
Mother Nature is a healer of all things also, and I think it will have a big share in this.
One of the big things that I've seen the whole of my life in science, in environmental science, is that in the absence of data, the mind makes up the worst case scenario. And until you have data, people live with the worst case scenario. And this is a classic example of what's going on here.
Rumors of the demise of Prince William Sound are definitely premature.
I do share Dr. Mackey's opinion that we do not have a complete and total disaster in Prince William Sound. I'm very encouraged by what I'm seeing over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and certainly with my experiences over the last 12 years, I have a lot of reason for hope.
What is certain, however, is the unflagging resolve and utter dedication of all involved in the massive cleanup to continue working constantly until the task is done.